they're saying that in both of those places, they rolled out a massive vaccination program in the weeks, months, and year leading up to this. Now, what happens then is you're basically injecting heavy metals, particularly aluminum, into people, which also has a neurotoxic and genotoxic effect. We know that from research. And we're putting all kinds of other metallic particles in the air, like aluminum, as part of, this sort of geoengineering program. Now, am I 100% sure there's geoengineering? I wouldn't say that, but I think there's very good evidence that that's happening. Now, so this is all things that are happening in the air, which affects people's lung function and affects the integrity of their genes, which is actually exactly what Carrie Mullis said you can use a PCR test for. If you have accelerated degradation of your genes, then you'll have a lower cycles until you catch it. So if you do something to a person and they only find it after 40 cycles, and then you do something and they only find it after 35, that usually demonstrates they have less degradation of their genetic material. It doesn't mean that was the cause, just less, it's less degradation. So we're putting in at least 3 things that we know of in those spots that are degrading the genes, causing the body to secrete these poisons, and also affecting lung function. And then, from everything I can gather, there's a new sheriff in town called a new rollout of accelerated 4G and 5G radio frequencies. Now, there's 2 things we know about that. One is that radio frequencies of whatever sort cause accelerated degradation of the genetic material, exactly what we're seeing here. And number 2, in particular, the 5G interferes with the integrity of the oxygen in the air, so the oxygen becomes less bioavailable, which will result in deterioration of the lung function. So here we have a situation where the symptoms are degradation of the DNA or RNA in this case, and poor lung function and trauma to the lungs causing bleeding and other symptoms of dry cough. And that is exactly what you would predict from these new toxic insults that are happening, particularly in those places. Now, you then could postulate that the body then sends signals out to the world, hey, we have a problem here. This is a new influence, which is also spreading all over the world. The 5G system was rolled out on that cruise ship. The 5G system was rolled out at the nursing home in Washington, where this supposed outbreak happened. And so while I wouldn't say that that's proof of my theory, I would certainly say, given the history of the relationship between new electromagnetic fields and viral outbreaks or pandemics or epidemics, all of which is meticulously outlined in the book, The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, I think it's extremely irresponsible for us to not question whether this is involved. And if it is involved, or if any of these things are involved, that is something that is of urgent need to do something about, because this is essentially an existential threat to all of us if we continue on with this glyphosate toxicity, aluminum toxicity, and new and accelerated electromagnetic smog poisoning of the entire Earth. So I'm going to stop there as far as my explanation of what's causing this. But then I want to just say, a lot of people then, of course, ask me, so Tom, what do you think we should do about this? And there's a lot of other questions. And by the way, I'm not here to give anybody any particular medical advice or to say whether or not you should follow certain guidelines or not. I'm here to explain my point of view about what's happening here. I'm also not right now interested in who's in exploring the political or who's doing this or anything that's sort of speculation. I'm simply not going there. But let me just conclude by saying I actually have two things which I am very confident, I would say almost 100% confident, will, if you take these seriously and follow my suggestion here, will help you in this time right now and in the coming days. And there's not too many things which I can say that about. And one of the reasons I can say that is because these two things came not from me, but from two very wise people who I'm in contact with, one directly, one indirectly in my life. The first one came from my wife. And she had the experience yesterday. She was going shopping at our local food co-op, and she came out. Everybody, of course, is standing in line 6 feet apart, and they're only letting certain people in at a time. And so there's all this whole lineup of people 6 feet apart. And she goes in, does her shopping, comes out with 3 heavy bags. I wasn't with her. And she comes out and she sees this elderly African-American gentleman who is lying on the floor, on the ground outside the store, bleeding from his head because apparently he fell or passed out, or she didn't see exactly what happened, but he was lying on the floor, dazed and confused and bleeding. Now, here's the interesting part of this story. There was a number of people in line, like 10, 20, I don't know how many, and none of them did or said anything. My guess is, like most people here in San Francisco, all those people stayed either staring or looking at their cell phones. Nobody called 911. Nobody said, "Are you okay?" Nobody said, "What happened?" They were paralyzed with fear and attached to their cell phone. So my wife went up and went to him, tried to help him get up, or called 911. I'm not sure exactly the sequence, and found his wife, who came, helped him, and then somebody else eventually helped come up and help him. And hopefully he got some help to find out what happened, and so hopefully he's okay. So here's my first suggestion here. We need to find our humanity here. And my suggestion of that is find out what it means to be human, and if at all possible, find somebody who's less fortunate than you are and help them out. And I guarantee that will help your life. I'm not saying it's a cure for this current situation, but I'm saying as strongly as I can that if we lose our humanity, and if we fail to even care about somebody who's bleeding on the ground, fail to even get off our cell phones, fail to ask somebody who's less fortunate than we are if there's anything, neighbor, we can do to help, then we are lost. So that's the first thing. Everybody can do that. It doesn't cost you anything. Find somebody less fortunate than you are and help them out.